Imagine a world where conflicts don't explode into anger, where disagreements don't leave emotional scars, and where people truly feel heard. It sounds almost utopian, yet psychologist and mediator Marshall Rosenberg believed such a world is possible if we change the way we communicate. His influential book, Nonviolent Communication, offers a powerful framework for transforming the way we express ourselves and understand others. Rather than blaming, criticizing, or defending, Rosenberg teaches a method that replaces judgment with empathy and conflict with connection. The result is communication that heals rather than harms. Rosenberg begins by addressing a simple but uncomfortable truth. Much of the way we speak has been shaped by habits that disconnect us from others. Everyday language is often filled with judgments, labels, and moralistic criticism. People say things like, "You're irresponsible," "You never listen," or "You always do this." While these statements may feel natural, they rarely produce understanding. Instead, they trigger defensiveness and resistance. Rosenberg calls this style of communication life-alienating communication because it distances people from compassion and mutual understanding. The author explains that the roots of such communication patterns are deeply embedded in cultural norms. Many societies teach people to categorize behavior as right or wrong, good or bad, deserving or undeserving. When someone behaves in a way that frustrates us, we often interpret their actions as a flaw in their character rather than as an expression of unmet needs. Rosenberg argues that this habit prevents real understanding. It keeps people trapped in cycles of blame and punishment instead of helping them address the deeper issues behind behavior. To break this cycle, Rosenberg introduces the core concept of nonviolent communication, often abbreviated as NVC. At its heart, NVC is a simple yet profound process built around four components: observation, feelings, needs, and requests. These steps help individuals communicate honestly without attacking others and listen empathetically without becoming defensive. The first step, observation, involves describing what actually happened without mixing it with evaluation or judgment. For example, instead of saying, "You're always late," one might say, "You arrived 30 minutes after the meeting started." The difference may seem subtle, but it removes the accusation from the statement. Observations focus purely on facts. When people hear judgments, they instinctively defend themselves, but when they hear neutral observations, they are more likely to listen. The second component involves expressing feelings. Rosenberg emphasizes that people often confuse feelings with thoughts. Statements such as, "I feel that you're ignoring me," are not actually expressions of feelings. They are interpretations or accusations. True feelings are emotions such as sadness, frustration, joy, fear, or disappointment. By clearly naming emotions, people reveal their inner experiences instead of hiding behind blame. The third component focuses on identifying needs. According to Rosenberg, all human feelings arise from whether or not our needs are being met. Needs are universal human requirements such as connection, understanding, respect, safety, autonomy, and appreciation. When these needs are fulfilled, people feel satisfied and happy. When they are unmet, people experience frustration or pain. Recognizing needs helps shift the focus from blaming others to understanding what truly matters. The fourth component is making requests. Once someone has identified their feelings and needs, they can ask for specific actions that might help meet those needs. A request differs from a demand because the other person is free to say no. Demands create resistance and resentment, but requests invite cooperation and dialogue. Rosenberg stresses that requests should be clear, concrete, and framed positively rather than as vague complaints. Throughout the book, Rosenberg demonstrates how these four elements work together to transform communication. Instead of saying, "You never help around the house," a person might say, "When I see dishes left in the sink overnight, I feel overwhelmed because I need support with household tasks. Would you be willing to wash the dishes after dinner?" This approach removes blame and invites collaboration. One of the most powerful aspects of nonviolent communication is empathy. Rosenberg explains that empathy is not about agreeing with someone or solving their problems. It is simply about fully understanding their feelings and needs. When people feel deeply heard, something remarkable happens. Their defensiveness melts away. Even intense anger often dissolves once someone experiences genuine empathy. Rosenberg recounts numerous examples from his work as a mediator in conflict zones, prisons, schools, and families. In situations where hostility seemed unavoidable, he found that empathic listening could bridge even the deepest divides. By focusing on feelings and needs rather than accusations, people who once viewed each other as enemies began to recognize their shared humanity. Another important concept Rosenberg introduces is self-empathy. Many people are quick to criticize themselves when things go wrong. They call themselves lazy, stupid, or incompetent. Rosenberg argues that this internal dialogue is just another form of life-alienating communication. Instead of judging ourselves, we should learn to listen to our own feelings and needs with compassion. Self-empathy allows people to grow without drowning in guilt or shame. The book also explores the difference between taking responsibility for feelings and blaming others. While someone's actions may trigger emotional reactions, Rosenberg insists that our feelings ultimately arise from our own needs and expectations. Saying, "You made me angry," places responsibility on another person. In contrast, saying, "I feel angry because I need more respect in this conversation," acknowledges personal responsibility while still expressing the issue clearly. Rosenberg also discusses how praise and compliments can sometimes function as subtle forms of manipulation. When praise is used to control behavior, it becomes another way of exerting power. Nonviolent communication instead encourages expressions of appreciation that focus on how someone's actions contributed to fulfilling a need. For example, rather than saying, "You're amazing," one might say, "When you helped me finish that project, I felt relieved because I needed support." This type of appreciation strengthens genuine connection. The author also challenges the concept of punishment and reward as tools for influencing behavior. Traditional systems often rely on fear of punishment or desire for reward to motivate people. Rosenberg argues that such approaches may produce compliance but rarely produce goodwill. When people act from fear or obligation, resentment builds beneath the surface. Nonviolent communication seeks cooperation based on mutual understanding and shared needs instead of coercion. Rosenberg also addresses the challenge of hearing criticism without reacting defensively. When someone criticizes us, our instinct is often to argue, justify ourselves, or counterattack. NVC offers another option: listening for the feelings and needs hidden behind the criticism. For example, if someone says, "You're so selfish," the underlying message might be frustration stemming from a need for consideration. By responding to the need rather than the accusation, communication becomes far more productive. The book illustrates how this approach works in real-life conflicts. Couples trapped in cycles of blame learn to express vulnerability instead of accusation. Parents discover ways to guide children without resorting to threats or punishment. Teachers create classroom environments where students feel respected rather than controlled. Even workplace conflicts can be transformed when colleagues shift their focus from proving who is right to understanding each other's needs. One particularly striking idea Rosenberg emphasizes is that anger itself is not the problem. Anger is simply a signal that an important need is not being met. The challenge lies in how people respond to that anger. When anger is expressed through blame or aggression, it escalates conflict. But when anger becomes a doorway to understanding unmet needs, it can lead to meaningful dialogue and change. Rosenberg's work also emphasizes the importance of presence in communication. Truly listening to someone requires letting go of preconceived judgments and focusing entirely on their experience. This kind of attentive listening is rare in everyday conversations, yet it is essential for building trust and connection. As the book progresses, Rosenberg repeatedly reinforces the idea that nonviolent communication is not merely a technique but a mindset. It requires a deep commitment to compassion, honesty, and respect. Practicing NVC may feel awkward at first because it challenges habits developed over a lifetime. However, with practice, it becomes a natural way of interacting. Rosenberg's vision extends beyond personal relationships. He believed that the principles of nonviolent communication could transform entire communities and societies. If individuals learn to listen empathically and express their needs without blame, many social conflicts could be addressed more constructively. While disagreements would still exist, they would no longer lead automatically to hostility or violence. By the end of the book, readers come to realize that communication is far more powerful than most people imagine. Words can either build bridges or deepen divisions. The choice lies in how those words are shaped by intention and awareness. Rosenberg's approach invites people to replace judgment with curiosity, blame with understanding, and hostility with compassion. Ultimately, the message of nonviolent communication is both simple and profound. Every human being shares the same fundamental needs, even when their strategies for meeting those needs differ. When people recognize this shared humanity, conflict becomes an opportunity for connection rather than a battlefield for domination. The journey Rosenberg offers is not merely about speaking differently, it is about seeing others through the lens of empathy. When people learn to express themselves honestly while remaining open to the experiences of others, relationships transform. Conversations become opportunities for deeper understanding rather than contests of right and wrong. In a world increasingly divided by misunderstanding, Rosenberg's ideas offer a refreshing reminder that communication can be a force for healing. By practicing observation without judgment, expressing feelings honestly, identifying needs clearly, and making respectful requests, individuals can create conversations that nurture connection and compassion. The beauty of nonviolent communication lies in its simplicity. Anyone can begin practicing it in everyday conversations, with family members, colleagues, friends, or even strangers. Each empathic interaction becomes a small step toward a more compassionate world. Rosenberg's work ultimately reminds us that peace does not begin in governments or institutions. It begins in the simple act of listening and speaking with empathy.